Welcome back. Today we are continuing our discussion of ADHD because there are millions of people living with and managing or trying to manage ADHD, and there were more questions. So while I'm new to this game, I'm doing the research and I'm testing the things out to see what sticks. Today I want to give you some of what's out there, the tried and true methods to manage focus and attention, motivation, and execution, so that when the going gets tough, you might have something else to get you going. I hope that what you hear today helps you get a handle on some of the challenges that you're facing and you leave with a little more understanding. So whether you're the type that finds it hard to pay attention to details or to stick to the thing or to follow through with the challenge, living with ADHD interferes with us accomplishing the things that we would like to all too often. Finding what works for us, wrangling the energy, the attention, and the focus requires some masterful management. So if you're out there getting shit done, well done. And if you feel like you're flailing, I see you and I feel you. I wanted to follow up on last week's episode with a little more on the subject, to offer some concrete information, to give more clarity on an often confusing set of symptoms, and to offer some more support for the struggles that often come with a neurodivergent brain. And if that word is unfamiliar to you, know that neurodivergent simply means a brain that functions and processes information differently. And that's due to structural and chemical differences. It's not a lesser than brain, and yet it can require a lot of extra lifting to operate in ways that meet societal expectations. And those societal expectations ask us to do things like sit, pay attention, focus on one thing at a time, regardless of our interest, to sit longer and to do that day in and day out for many of us. Clearly, I have some feelings about this, but seriously, there's not always inspiration and creativity allotted into the structure of our days. There's not always movement, spontaneity. There's not even standing most of the time. And there's certainly not a lot of time outdoors and in nature. So these things create a lot more challenge for someone with a neurodivergent brain. Some posit that those with ADHD would be the ones to keep us alive in the woods, attuning to the sounds near and far, noticing and attending to so much at once, because it can have its perks, but not always in the environments that we find ourselves in. To operate in this way, we rely on our executive function to help us tune in and focus on whatever it is that needs to be attended to in the moment, to manage time, planning, organization of the to-dos. For those with ADHD, that attuned focus is a main challenge. The brain functions differently, making it easier to be pulled in many directions and harder to focus on just one. This can look like forgetting important information, time blindness, which you might remember from the last episode is where the lines of our perception of time are kind of blurred. And it's not a disregard for time, but it's a different sense of time passing that can lead us to get off schedule and to be late. There can be a difficulty starting tasks, losing focus and attention in the middle, being pulled toward other things. There can be difficulty with keeping track of things and not losing things, difficulty staying organized, and maybe an inability to prioritize the things that need to be done. That can lead to missing deadlines or relying on deadlines to get started, putting us in a pressure cooker, or difficulty completing things even for self-care. These challenges show up in a lot of ways, and they can include difficulty mustering motivation. Executive function has been assessed and measured through a pretty narrow lens in research up until recent years, and so we are still learning and understanding what's happening in executive function, but also for people with ADHD. So expect to continue to learn more about yourself. But what we know right now is that for many years, executive function had been tested on things in relation to maybe school readiness or achievement and those social behaviors that have to do with current societal expectations. We're still learning and expanding on what executive function is. And recent years have shown us that there are these two kinds of categories of executive function. There's hot executive function and cool. Hot relies on emotion to execute, and cool are the things that actually people with ADHD can struggle more with where it comes to organization, planning, and attention. Hot executive function, or the reliance on hot cognition, can get us motivated. It can get us to take action based on instinct and intuition. It can have us function from a motivation to do the things that we care about, we're interested in, that we have that emotional drive toward. Know that it also can lead toward emotion guiding our actions and our choices. And if the emotion is a difficult one, it can interfere. So we're going to come back to that at the end if you stay tuned to understand more about emotion and regulation and how to tame that. Our executive function, in a way, can be flipped on to the extent to which we care about the problem we're solving, the thing that we're doing, what's in front of us. Hot cognition allows us to make those intuitive decisions, and it can lead some people with ADHD to realize that they're actually really good under pressure or in crisis. This form of executive function comes from the part of our brain that's related to emotion and social processing. Care motivates us. Difficult feelings can inhibit us. So knowing that while things like attention and focus and engagement can be challenging, when we care about something, when you're interested in something, you can do this. You can tap into focus. You really can actually hyper-focus, I'm sure you found, on the things that feel meaningful and important to you. And I think that's important to point out because for a lot of people who struggle with ADHD, you've probably found yourself in so many environments and situations where you feel inadequate, unable, or like a failure. And yet, if you look at where you really care about things, you probably do see yourself getting them done and taking care of them, able to engage and follow through to the end. So while there's more that could be shared about the brain and theory and knowing more about ADHD in that sense, today we're here to talk about tools and how to begin to manage. So these strategies are not meant to be replacements for therapy or medication. They are offered as a support and not to solve, and know that often these things will work better with the support of therapy and medication. And know that if you have ADHD, I am well aware that you know the wise things to do and many ways that you could be doing them. And it can be really frustrating, actually, to have people suggest that you should just do it this way and it will work. These are highly individualized strategies. Know that you cannot determine if something works for you by trying it one time. So if you're interested in any of these strategies, put them into practice for a few weeks. Use them many times before you rule them out. And that will mean actually using some of the strategies to keep the strategies front of mind. So how do you do that? Maybe it's with the bells and whistles in your phone. Maybe it's a concrete reminder in your notes or post-it on the wall. Think about how to keep these where you will see them, where you will think of them, where you'll remember them so that you actually can practice them, so you can actually figure out if they work for you. So if you remember what I've shared in the episode on motivation and procrastination, you'll understand that those things tend to be on high for people with ADHD. And my hope is that if you apply that knowledge with these strategies, it might help you move forward when avoidance pulls you toward greener pastures, and it will help you hopefully tap into your higher and wiser self that knows that we'll feel better if we do the thing. So let's look at how we can make that a bit more manageable so that we can get some things done. So at first is the use of if-then statements and commitments. This means putting low desire, low interest action before high desire, high interest. If I do this, then I allow myself to do this next thing. So it becomes more like a reward system. It's committing rather than expecting interest to increase tomorrow, which we know it won't, but we hope it will. Often this can feel like we're talking to that part of us that's like a kid within us that doesn't want to do the hard thing. So we are acting as this loving, wise adult who is setting those boundaries for ourselves, putting the parameters and making that commitment. If we do this, then we do that. Another strategy that we can use is pairing with already established parts of our day or routine. So this makes it easier for our working memory, which is a part of executive function that is challenged often for those of us with ADHD. And what that means is doing something like, when I make my coffee or when I'm drinking my coffee, I will, and you do the thing that is challenging. You can pair it with the beginning or end of a part of your day that's already established, like after breakfast or on your lunch break, while I'm cooking dinner, while I'm on the couch before I watch TV. There's an if-then paired with something that's already established in your day, right? So committing to a time and a place and putting it before whatever that routine is that you have in your weekend morning. On my walk or during my commute, I'll make that call. This could look like committing to doing something like folding the laundry while you watch your favorite show, but you're only watching if you're folding. See how I keep saying the word commit? These are commitments, right? But pairing it with things that are already within your day so that you don't have to work as hard to include something new because you're combining it with something that's already established, time that's already there, where you might have the ability to do something else alongside it or before or after. The next is a little different. It's allowing yourself this rule. I don't have to finish. Instead of asking ourselves to do things in these all or nothing ways that can often feel overwhelming and undesirable, we're talking about different ways of breaking things up into smaller parts. So we make small, reasonable, concrete steps rather than asking ourselves to do all or nothing. So 5 minutes toward the task. It could look like opening 4 pieces of mail, reading for 10 minutes, or writing for 5 toward a project that you're working on. It could mean starting the dishes or the sweeping and committing to one area or one piece at a time. And you can keep recommitting, certainly. But the idea is that you're committing only to doing one small part that feels manageable, that you can actually get yourself to get started. So maybe you fold one load of laundry, or you just put away the pants. It's one step at a time. Setting a timer, though this might sound like something you do for a child, this absolutely works for adults. This gives us a beginning and an end. So you do something you really enjoy afterward as a reward to make it even more beneficial. Those if-thens combined with, this is time limited. And then you see that time go by and maybe you're like, wow, 5 minutes was really fast. Because if you have time blindness, it might feel like 5 minutes is really long or too much, or 10 minutes or 20. Use the timer and allow yourself to walk away and do something different, because changing the scene, allowing some novelty into your life will actually help you get more done in a day. Another way to think of this is to chunk it. So you commit to one chunk of the process, like deleting 3 emails, knowing that you'll come back tomorrow and you'll do 3 more. Or committing to one stack on your desk. So that could also look like one shelf of the closet or one drawer getting organized. Chunk it. The next drawer, the next shelf, the next stack at a later time or a different day. The next thing I want you to think about trying is keeping the most important thing, all of the important things, front of mind. The way you keep this front of mind might be unique to you, but really thinking about your day and each moment of your day or different parts of your day in this way can be so helpful to actually executing what is important. And this might sound so obvious, but are we actually doing it? So one Post-it front and center, and until that one thing is done, we commit to not letting ourselves move on to the next thing or to be pulled by other things. Or if we are pulled, we know we're coming back and we're looking at that Post-it, and this is the thing that today needs to get done by the end of the day, because this is the thing that is most important to us. And that's why we're choosing it. And of course, we have so many things that are important to us that we really want to get done that often don't get done. It might be something that someone else is asking of us that we truly do have to do for work, say. What we need to do is help ourselves get there. And when those things that are important to us have blocks, we just have to recognize that there are blocks. There's probably a negative emotion impairing versus that hot emotion motivating, right? And so much like chunking or breaking things up into smaller amounts of time, one commitment at a time is less threatening. It's less overwhelming. It allows us to approach just a part as opposed to a whole. It gets us out of thoughts of the perfection of completing everything on our to-do list. And it helps us to actually feel a little more successful, which can build our motivation for the next thing or the next day. So not the whole room getting organized, but maybe it's that one corner, that one chair, or even making the bed. And when that piece is done, we can knock out the next piece, or we can take a break and we can change stations and we can find something that's more rewarding or more novel before we come back to the next thing. So you're not a fan of Post-its, totally fine. Maybe it's a calendar reminder with an alert, or maybe you use the reminder section on your phone, or maybe it's a physical calendar on your desk or a notebook and you cross one thing off at a time. Find your strategy, use color, make it interesting, but one thing. Find your one thing. And when you get through that one thing, what is the next most important thing to you? What's the most important thing for your day moving forward with less stress and more ease? Remember, also, your calendar only works if you look at it. And if you're like me, you might really like to buy the nicest planner and all the organizational things, but you might forget to look at it. So things with alarms, reminders, to start to build that into your day so that you actually look at that one thing or you look at the calendar, it's really important. So keep that in mind. Getting things on a schedule is something that is recommended time and time again, and it's something that I think most of us intuitively know would be really helpful. Time blocking is a big part of this. Visual depictions of time, routine, and tasks can be really helpful. Color actually helps people when you do this. If you're someone like me, I write in colorful pens all day. It just helps me get engaged in what I'm writing, but you could actually highlight and color code things. For some people, it helps it start to stand out, that when I see that color, oh yeah, that's that thing in my life. It's, my walk, or it's picking up my kids, or it's a family thing that comes in this color, whereas it's a work thing in another color. It can really help our brain connect. This is something that if you spend a few weeks playing with, you might really shift something for you. So when you're thinking about your schedule, yes, it could be just like the to-dos from work on your calendar, but when you make your own schedule of your day, it will also help with things like time blindness. So when you start to pay attention to what's the thing that I want to do as my priority today, what else do I have to do today? Where do I have to go? Do I have to drive someone to school? Do I have an appointment? And what are the things around the house and for myself personally outside of work that I need to fit in this day? As you're looking at your schedule or that one important thing each day, there's also still the trash and the laundry, recycling. So when you're looking at your schedule, you might do yourself a favor of organizing those aspects of your life into small parts, just like everything else. So maybe Sunday, you do a load of laundry, and Monday you fold. Maybe Tuesday is trash and Wednesday recycling. You can think about how to chunk the life tasks in your organizational process so that they become more of a routine and a rhythm and less of an afterthought, something weighing on you, something stacking. When we start paying attention to time blocking, what it actually looks like over the course of the day, and we pay attention to that for a few weeks, we'll notice that often we might be asking too much of ourselves day to day, that we might be assuming that things take less time than they take, that we might not be accounting for things that we really need to be able to function and get things done, like breaks, change of scene, getting outside, taking that walk. Are you eating meals? Put them on the schedule. I'm not kidding. Put them on the schedule. So without our planned time and an awareness of actually how our time is moving through the day, it's shocking how much of our time actually can get either wasted or how much stress and strain we're creating in our life by overbooking ourselves. This is one that I would really love to see everyone try for a few weeks. By the way, when I have people do this, they're shocked because they don't realize how many things they actually do in a day. And they also realize where a lot of time is kind of going out the window. But if you notice, you can schedule that for downtime. Like you can actually say, I want to do nothing right here. And when you get a little bit more aware and a little more planful, your days can feel really expanded. So give it a whirl. Another strategy we can use, especially for things that are low interest, maybe more challenging, but also important, is to do them at the start of the day. Getting something done that can set the tone for your day can also be a bit motivating. But the thing that I also want you to keep in mind is that I think we've all had the experience of saying like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start this new thing today. And we might put it like after work. What happens? If you're like most people, by the end of the day, you have lower energy, less brain function. You're ready for relaxation, and doing harder things is harder. So do the harder things in the beginning of the day so that mental, physical, emotional lethargy doesn't get in the way. And you might have the ability to actually benefit from the feeling. And if you remember one of the other podcast episodes, when we do something, we get hit with serotonin. So this can actually be really mood boosting. So do the thing. If it's hard, if it's challenging, it feels like an accomplishment, you're going to benefit mentally, physically, and emotionally. It's probably going to be easier. And this sense of pride can actually reinforce your ability to do it the next day and the next day. And soon a lot of people find that this becomes more of an enjoyable part of their routine, that when we get these things out of the way at the beginning of the day, the rest of the day feels a little lighter, a little freer, a little easier, and we begin to feel more capable of doing the things that we used to feel like we couldn't do or didn't do well. So this might actually look like something like a daily ritual. It could look like something along the lines of clearing your desk at the beginning of each day. Just clear it, organize it, get things out of the way that you don't need. And if you do that every day, it gets easier and easier because that's what habit does. Habit gets easier, and it starts to keep that buildup from creating more and more stress. Now, your desk is just one example. It could be a commitment like looking at your calendar at the beginning of the day. That could be your one hard thing that you do at the start of the day, every day, that we were just talking about. So think about where you want to look at it. Maybe it's while you drink your coffee. Maybe it's at breakfast. Maybe it's when you get to your desk and your brain's already 3 steps ahead in what you're going to do that day. Get creative. Keep that where you're going to use it if it's something you really do want to use. So think about what is the hard thing that you can put at the beginning of the day, whether it's that important thing, a task, or something that would be ritualized that could actually be really beneficial that you've wanted to see yourself do, you haven't yet put into a routine or rhythm. The next thing has kind of snuck into what I've already said, and it's visual cues. I want you to really think about what that means. Cues, that's anything that sends a message to our brain when we see it, right? We're cued by things all the time, but we can intentionally cue ourselves in this way. We're going beyond Post-its with this one. It might mean to keep something front of mind, like the book we have to return to the library. We put it in our... We've all probably done this, by the way, but are you putting it in the best place to get it done? So is it like in your shoe, on the seat of your car? Put it where you see it, where you can't ignore it, where you can't put it off for another day. That's actually like bonus points if you do it that way. Another way of using a visual cue would be to help yourself prepare in advance for the things that you want to be able to execute. If you want to go to yoga in the morning, put your water bottle and your mat by the door. Set yourself up. And when you see that, when you get up in the morning, it might be a little easier to grab it. You might remember, oh yeah, I'm committing to this. I want to go. These reminders help us to follow through with the thing that we want to do. And while I said we're going beyond Post-its, you can use a Post-it for this. Put it on the door. Put it on the bathroom mirror, put it where you're going to see it. Give yourselves the reminders for the things that you really want for yourself, not just the things that create stress that you don't want to do. Let these motivate the things that will feel good for you, because the more you do those things, the more mental, emotional, and physical energy you'll have for the things that are harder. You can also use this for the things that are low desire. So if you have a basket where your mail is hiding or a drawer where you're putting things, take them out. Let the visual cue of those things be a reminder that this is the thing we're going to tackle today. We're going to get it out of the way. Next up, the strategy of changing the environment. I think I talked about this in the last episode. It's so helpful for me. I hope that this one helps you too. But notice what happens when you get up and you go to a different space. Whether you're at work and you just take a walk down the hall to get water, changing the environment, taking mental breaks from looking at our computer screen can be immensely beneficial, whether you have ADHD or not. This could mean doing important things for yourself, whether it's work-related or personal, outside of your house. Go to the coffee shop or the library where you don't have the distractions of the cleaning or whatever needs to be done at home there to pull you. Take yourself out of those environments, minimize the distractions in doing so. But know that simply by changing environments, we can wake up some mental energy and a novelty to make the tasks that we're doing throughout our day a little bit easier to manage. Do it with a buddy. Love this one, people. You would not believe how much this has helped me. I didn't even know it was helping me. I also didn't even know I had ADHD when it did help me. But whew, so good, this one. Here's how we can tap into it. We can use other support in multiple ways. One is the way you might think of, which is literally enlisting someone for help. If you haven't cleaned out your closet and you need to get rid of old clothes, phone your friend, have her come over. But there's another that's my favorite, and it's called body doubling. And this has worked so well for me. Body doubling is when we work on a task with another person present. They don't actually have to help us. They don't have to be involved. It's simply their presence that does the trick. And I have found this one really effective, as I've said. I once paid an assistant, and when we would work together, I'd actually do all of the work. And I would knock out more in those hours than I would in a week or a month normally on these creative projects that I struggled to make time for, and to get through myself. I didn't actually resent paying her, even though I did all of the work, because it was so effective. And when I found out what body doubling was, I realized that's what we were doing. She was there with me. It was focus time, and we got stuff done, and it was so good. Now, you don't have to pay someone, so you can co-work. Get yourself in an environment where there are others working around you. You can go to the coffee shop or the library, and you might find that people being there puts you in a state of mind where you become more effective in your focus. This can also work by phoning a friend and just having them work side by side. I actually do this every week with one of my friends on Zoom. We both get on Zoom and we both do our work, and it is a blast because we're effective and it feels good. It's not even about the fact that we are there having fun together. We're actually both working. The last way to use someone is for accountability. So actually saying out loud in a concrete way what it is you want or need to do, how they can either help you or how they can just hold that for you and check in. So really important, always name for someone the way in which you want to be supported and the way in which you want to have accountability, because often people will assume that you will want the support that they would want, and it won't be the same for you as it is for them. We all need different kinds of support. Let them know what you need, but use people. Talk to them about what it is that one thing today, and have them check in with you at the end of the day. And if it doesn't go well, talk about what got in the way, right? Move it to the next day and try to figure out what those blocks and barriers are. Let them help you. Let them support you. Your therapist is a really good person for this. The next strategy is to catch perfect planning. And what we're going to do here is we're going to notice where we're going all or nothing or perfectionistic, which can keep us from starting. And if you don't know that about perfectionism, don't worry, there are podcasts to come about perfectionism because it is stealthy. Often if we want things done right and well and perfectly, we don't begin. If we don't feel like today, right now is the moment that I can do it exactly how it should be done, I might not do it. So we're going to catch perfect planning, and we're going to just put that energy into doing one step. Beginning feels better than not beginning. And you might need to write that down, and you might need to remind yourself. Beginning is better than perfect, because perfect can keep us paralyzed. There will not be a perfect time. There will not be a perfect day. There will not be perfect preparation, and you aren't going to be more likely to execute with any of it. You're still going to have to start, and it will still probably be a little bit scary because it still might not go the way you hope it will go. But beginning gets you closer to it. Beginning allows you to course correct as you go, but not beginning keeps you right here where you are in this place of maybe discomfort or fear or self-doubt. So do one thing that will make it more likely that you can accomplish it. Signs of this may be buying every organizational tool, every product that could help you do something perfectly and not beginning. Is that you? Do you see yourself in this? I see myself in this. I used to buy all the things because I wanted to do things well and I wanted to do them right and I wanted to have everything I needed for success. I was just putting it off for another day. Half-ass is better than no-ass. Beginning is the only way to get to the end. Keep it in mind. See if you can get yourself to commit. Take the step. Beginning will start to feel really good because beginning does feel good, even if a little nerve-wracking. Think about it. Do you ever regret getting started? The next focus is organization. I think of this one as the irony of ironies because I know for most people with ADHD, there is a strong desire for organization. And yet it's really hard. And then it's really easy to judge ourselves and think that there's something wrong with us. I had a friend tell me about this experience she related to where the woman was bringing her piles home every weekend to organize, moving the piles from the desk to the bag, to the house, to the bag, back to work. And the piles just traveled with her because she wanted so badly to make those piles go away, to take care of the things, to check them off the list, to organize them, to get rid of them. But instead, they plagued her and followed her everywhere she went. And maybe it's not piles for you, but maybe you can think of that thing in your life that you have a really hard time approaching, executing, organizing, and feeling free of. And this makes sense because there are truly differences in our brains that can make it harder to organize no matter how high our desire is for organization. What I want you to do for this one is pay attention to the patterns in where you're putting things and how you're doing things, rather than giving the power over to the demand of what a part of you thinks it should look like. So let me give you some examples of this. I really loved reading this one, and I think it helped me a lot see where I've done this in my life and where I could do this differently. An example of this would be that rather than asking ourselves to put the clean clothes that we tried on and we didn't wear back on the hanger immediately, or to expect ourselves to maybe put like the dirty clothes in one place, to like watch what you do. So if you try on 3 outfits and you choose outfit number 3, outfits number 1 and 2 are like strewn about your room, or maybe there's a catch-all chair, can you put something there that is meant for those clean clothes to come back to them when you do have the time to put them back on the hanger? What about putting the laundry basket where you actually change, instead of having the laundry basket somewhere that you have to take a few extra steps to get the clothes to it? So let's say that like you change in your closet or you change in the bathroom, but the laundry basket's not there. Can you put the laundry basket where the clothes actually end up? People talk about this a lot with car keys. Like there might be a hook that's very intuitive, some would think, for where your keys go, but where do you actually put your keys down? Because you might actually put your keys down pretty consistently in the same place. Can you make that the place that your keys live? Anyone with ADHD, I think, can relate to this, that if you have a desk, you might know where everything is. Everything actually probably has a place. It might not be the way you want it to be, but you're putting things in places. What if you flip your thinking to say that that is where this thing goes? But can you give yourself a way of containing what is important so that it doesn't feel chaotic? A lot of people say use clear organizers, clear drawers on your desk so you can still see the thing, but that it has a home. Another way of looking at this is to look at your desk, for example, and look at what is here that is unnecessary, that I do not touch, that I do not use day to day. And can that be put away so that the things that I really do keep here because I use them all the time don't feel as cluttered or in as much disarray? Clear out what is unimportant. Actually simplifying is a strategy in and of itself. If your kitchen feels overwhelming, notice if your counters are covered with appliances you don't use, or notice if you have so many dishes that your sink can get filled up before you actually have to wash them or load the dishwasher. Can you have fewer dishes and make it more likely that impetus, that stress of I have to, will actually move you forward? Stress can be helpful in that way. We all know that stress has helped us get a project done. But if we have so many clothes and so many dishes, we might have so many big piles waiting for us before the stress actually gets us to motivate to do the thing. I found that I was leaving things in different parts of the house because I was working in different parts of the house. One of the things that I did was I started keeping my notebook and my pens in the room I kept bringing the things to, because I'd bring them there and then I'd expect myself to bring them back upstairs or back to my office. And instead, I just found a place for them to live. And now I go there and I'm set up for work and I'm not wasting time making extra trips. And it also doesn't feel like they're in the wrong place or that it's a mess. They now have a place to live in that room. And so just changing my thinking around that has allowed things to actually be pretty effective and actually to feel quite organized. So remember, your ADHD mind is brilliant. It will know where things are, even in the chaos, half of the time. But you might be able to decrease some of that chaos and give yourself a little bit more peace of mind and a little more ease in finding things that do get lost if you change where their homes to be where it feels to you more intuitive. One part of organization that can be really important to keep in mind is to keep things in sight and out of mind. When you feel like you're struggling to organize, it can be really tempting to like shove things in the cabinet, the drawer, the closet behind closed doors. And when we do that, we will allow things to pile up, especially things we don't even need. And not conquering it all in one day or one weekend, but go through those drawers and get the things out that you actually want to be able to access. Get rid of the things that you don't need and simplify. Try not to hide away the disarray, because you're just creating work for later. This was huge for me when it came to mail. as long as there was a mail basket, mail would go in the basket. And I hate mail and I hate opening mail, but I also hated that mail basket being full of I didn't know what. So I now have a routine that I don't use a mail basket. I get the mail and I go through my mail and I recycle or I keep what's important. While there's a lot of things coming through that are not important, I try not to get caught up in those feelings that can make me mad about mail. And instead, I just go through it. Every time mail comes in, every day, gone. It takes 2 minutes, but I used to have mail stack up in that basket until it filled up, and then I was angry. I don't feel like being angry about mail anymore. And by the way, I do really love getting some things in the mail. I get to see those things as soon as they come through. It's not often enough. I think we should write more letters. Simplifying. It's very Marie Kondo. If you're feeling cluttered, if you feel like you're struggling to organize, maybe you can get some things out of your space. Pass them on, donate them. Pay attention to what you actually use in the kitchen versus what you don't. Pay attention to what you're not actually wearing in your closet and how much space those things take up. You can do this stepwise by putting things in a bag or in a box. And then if you don't wear them for a while and you don't miss them, get them out of there. Create space. It can really help us mentally, physically, and emotionally to not constantly be surrounded by things that we don't need to see and that we don't need to organize. Simplifying can also help us see that maybe we've been spending too much time expecting ourselves to hang up our clothes and we might make space to fold them instead. Take a look at your closet, your bathroom, the cabinet, the kitchen, one thing at a time, not all at once, but what can you get out of there so that you can feel a little more spacious and a little more organized? Know that everything that I'm saying truly will build on itself, and one routine can lead to another. Try it. One thing at a time, one piece, and let it layer, let it build. Because that's how motivation works. It builds from the thing that we do when we don't have the motivation. What we're often doing is we're building our interest in these things being maintained. Interest is what will drive us. Interest will get us going. Interest will get us motivated. And the more we see that we're capable of doing these things, the less that we'll have that negative chatter telling us that it's not possible, or it's not for us, or it's not who we are. And instead, we'll have that evidence that I actually can do these things, and it feels good. And so we might find ourselves able to continue to maintain. So little daily rituals, small steps, like clearing away the 100 glasses that have accrued because I'm always drinking tea and coffee and water. Getting them out of my space every day allows the next day to feel a little bit better. And it's not hard. It's just building the habit of actually gathering things up or putting things away and taking the 5 minutes. And remember, set the timer. See what you can do in 5 minutes. You might surprise yourself. These things become the norm, and it becomes a lot easier to do them in this way. It frees up a lot of mental space and a lot of mental energy. So I hope that there's something within here that is clicking for you. And a reminder once again that none of these things are going to work if we only do them one time. We really do have to give it time, a few weeks, repetition, reminder, and practice. We'll know what works for our brain when we do this. This isn't a one and done kind of thing. We build habit, strategy, and routine like a muscle, and we can actually strengthen the functions of our brain, though it's not technically a muscle. We are building and rewiring the system of our brain and ways of managing and navigating our life. So before we go, I want to talk to you about some of the things that can really bolster our mood, our attention, and our ability to motivate. So what we're talking about next is exercise. For some people, this is an easy thing to go to. For others, there's a significant block, and there's a spectrum full of people in between. You likely know that exercise is recommended for a million things, but if you have ADHD, a workout can do more than actually make you feel good. It can actually help control symptoms. Now, it's not a replacement for medication or therapy, but it is something that can really jumpstart your brain and your body to help you in ways that can counter the symptoms of ADHD. So moving your body, things like aerobic exercise or really mindful movement have this effect. Dopamine is released, and you may recall from the last episode that dopamine is something that a lot of ADHD people are deficient in. And getting dopamine in this way that is helpful, not harmful, can lead us to having the energy and the brain power and the drive to do the next thing in our day. So The benefits of movement for people with ADHD are easing anxiety and stress, improving impulse control, and reducing compulsive behaviors. It can enhance memory, our working memory, that type of memory that is really hard for people with ADHD to maintain. It can help us improve our ability to plan and organize. Aiming for about 30 minutes of movement that gets your heart rate up, gets your breathing up, meaning it's aerobic. So this is something that challenges and really wakes your body up. To get this effect, you can think of things like taking brisk walks, swimming, biking, running, and you can do things like combine running and walking. You can also benefit in different ways from other movements that are more mindful or take more focus, like martial arts, rock climbing. Some types of dance, gymnastics, and yoga require this of us, and it can improve our focus and our concentration, our memory, our balance, and our fine motor skills as well. And ball sports like tennis and racquetball, which have us tracking and making quick decisions and fast movements and working collaboratively with other people, have similar benefits. Make sure before you do any of this, though, that you check in with your doctor. You want to make sure that whatever you're choosing to do is aligned with where you're at in your health and your physical ability right now, and that it might not do harm while you're trying to do good. Regardless of what you choose, it's going to have more staying power if it is connected to personal meaning for you, if it lights you up, if it's fun, and if it's important and valuable, if it's something that you care about. I have worked with many people who have beat themselves up over exercise, who have experienced feeling like they're not doing enough, or who have compulsively exercised or compulsively moved in ways that worked against them as a result. So remember, do this for yourself. Do this to decrease stressful symptoms and not to feed anxiety. We can also manage ADHD by strengthening our brain. Mindfulness techniques can be used to strengthen brain networks that support stress management, that support focus, attention, memory, and mood. So basically, everything we need. Mindfulness is paying attention on purpose. So sometimes when we hear mindfulness, we will relate it to meditation. While absolutely it is a part of meditation, it is a part of meditation that can stand alone. And mindfulness training can look like focusing on the present moment. It can look like practicing awareness of sensation, intentionally paying attention to our breath. It can happen while we're walking, while we're doing the dishes, and while we're in the middle of our workday without taking a step away. Mindfulness can be really accessible as long as we understand what we're doing in order to practice it. And it is simple. So I'm going to break it down a little bit for you today. There are a lot of different ways that we can practice mindfulness. I absolutely encourage you to look into more, to talk to your therapist, and to employ some new practices. But today, I'll give you a few. Before we get into strategies, I want you to know that mindfulness can really boost the ability of your brain to direct your attention. So know that while we can struggle with paying attention to something that maybe isn't the high priority in the moment, or that we can get really focused on the thing that we love and then struggle to motivate to focus on another thing, mindfulness builds our ability to choose to direct our attention even toward the things that are of lower interest over time. Mindfulness means doing what you're doing when you're doing it, paying attention to what you're doing. So when you're washing the dishes, you're actually feeling the water. You're actually paying attention to that dish, and you're not thinking about yesterday, today, or tomorrow while you're doing it. You can take a mindfulness break at your desk by simply scanning the environment around you, taking your eyes off of the computer and noticing what you see, color, texture. Mindfulness is a sensory experience, what we can hear, see, smell, touch, taste. Mindfulness is also a sensory experience from the inside out, noticing the sensations that we feel and the emotions that we feel. We can have a mindful meal by simply noticing what we're eating while we're eating it, not doing other things while we're eating, just paying attention to what we're eating while we chew and how it tastes. It can be simple, and yet that can be a very hard thing to begin to do. So know that while this is accessible and easy, much like everything else I've said, you might have to remind yourself to do it. You might have to actually put it in your calendar, or you might have to set the alarm. And we can do any activity mindfully, or we can do it distractedly. So think about that. Like when you make the bed, you can do that mindfully. That can be your mindfulness practice. When you're sitting in a room with your kid, You can mindfully attend to what they're doing or what you're doing with them, or you can be doing two things at once and looking at your phone. Don't judge it, but just notice that the more you think about this, the more you'll pull yourself back into the present moment and the more you'll be practicing it. So think about it, notice it, put reminders for it, practice, and you'll do it more and more and more. Mindfulness will help us realize that getting the thing done that we're meant to be doing right now actually does feel better than the distraction of our phones. There's research that shows it too, but I think we've all experienced it, that being in this moment and moving through our day in a way that ends up feeling good and that doesn't leave things on the back burner in the back of our mind actually really helps us. And so it's reinforcing like everything else we've been talking about today. Once you start practicing mindfulness, you'll notice more often when you aren't mindful what's happening, and that's information that can help you redirect your own attention. The last strategy I'm going to share today, and again, this is one I could share a million things about, but I'll try to be concise so that it's accessible, is self-regulation. Learning to notice our state of mind and body, what we feel, how we feel, and giving ourselves what we need to ride it out, release it, contain it, or address it is big. Whether we have ADHD diagnoses or not, learning self-regulation skills is something that will benefit any of us and all of us in our lives. And unfortunately, most of us weren't taught any. So we're going to start now if we have not already begun. For many with ADHD, it can feel like emotional experiences are amplified. Combining mindfulness and self-regulation can be like a superpower for turning down the volume, reality checking, and grounding our experiences in the facts, not just the feelings. This doesn't mean dismissing our feelings, but it means noticing how we feel and stepping back to take pause, to reflect before acting so that we're not reacting and we're not operating on impulse and emotion. This is really important. Now, whether emotion regulation feels like a challenge for you or not, we all have emotion. We all have feelings. We all have things that we need to cope with throughout the day. And that's what regulation is really about. Noticing the activity of our nervous system that's going to happen automatically for all of us. So we are going to find ourselves activated. We're going to find ourselves shutting down. We're going to feel the impulse to get out of the room, to get out of the space, to get away from the thing. Those fight, flight, and freeze responses are so automated and a part of our life, and these skills will help us slow that down, notice what we really need to respond to, and choose wisely for ourselves. Earlier, I mentioned hot cognitions and hot executive function, and these refer to our self-management in situations where emotions run high. So while one charged situation might have us motivate and focus on the thing in front of us, another might actually pull us from effectiveness and pull us out of a situation and destabilize us. Self-regulation is about managing the pull of our emotions so that we can make grounded choices about where and when we want to engage, so we can get ourselves to a more neutral place to choose. This allows us skills in flexible thinking, which is a part of our executive function that we can strengthen through self-regulation and through mindfulness. It allows us to think more objectively about our decisions and make meaningful ones, and these skills can help us resist temptation and choose the thing that's more valuable maybe in the long term versus what is pulling us right now impulsively in the short term. So it can mean decreasing or ceasing impulsive responses and resisting the pull of distraction. And these skills can be improved through practice. So if you've been listening along, you've probably heard me say that broadening our emotional vocabulary is a skill in and of itself. Learning how to name our feelings beyond happy, sad, and angry, and also learning how to acknowledge the sensations that are signals from our body trying to let us know what we need. So is our body in fight, flight, freeze? What is that tightness, the tension, the queasiness telling us? Are we agitated? Are we frustrated? Are we disappointed? Do we feel pressured, isolated, inadequate? Noticing and understanding what we're feeling paves the way to being able to take care of how we're feeling in a more informed way with grounding or soothing or support or distraction, but mindfully chosen distraction. There's always bonus points for using mindfulness as we move through these other skills. So I'll say here that a lot of people don't feel like they know how to cope. And that's a big reason for this podcast. So if self-regulation is new to you, keep listening. Know that practices for self-regulation are my jam, and I'm always including them in any of my offerings, whether it's my courses or my women's circles. We are always learning these things together, and in the podcast, I will continue to provide them here. So today, for simplicity, when it comes to self-regulation, I want you to start with that baseline. Can you start by expanding that practice of noticing how you feel? Am I activated? What is the word for the sensation in my body? Can I name what this feeling is, this state of mind, body, and emotion? Doing that is a skill in and of itself, and it's the beginning of self-regulation. And to take it one step further, apply mindfulness. Notice how you're feeling, and before reacting and responding, or to help yourself ground, practice mindfulness. Notice the environment around you. Look around, take in with your senses what you can see, hear, feel, smell, touch, taste. Take a moment to feel your breath in and out. Take a mindful walk into another room. Mindfully get yourself some grounding cold water. Listen back to the episode on nervous system, and you'll hear more about this there so that you can start to build and apply, but just take one step at a time. You've gotten a lot of strategies today. The expectation is not that you try all of these things, and know that there's not actually an expectation. You can set this aside and come back to it next week, next month, next year when you have the capacity to put something new into place. But if you are feeling motivated to try something new, try to start small. Try not to expect yourself to do all of these things. Remember, 5 minutes, chunk it, put it on the calendar, set the bell and whistle for that one thing, and practice it for a few weeks. Thank you so much for listening, for being here, for watching if you're watching along. This is In Our Skin, and I am Ashley McCann. If you are interested in more support, I have a few offerings that are open right now. You can join us for a special women's workshop on March 24th in honor of Women's History. And there you'll be learning more of these skills and the like, as well as getting to connect with other people and have some fun and tap into some creativity with no expectations or pressure. If you're looking to change your relationship with food, the doors are still open for that course, and you'll be able to access the live support of coaching each week for the next 7 weeks. So if you're looking for something else, if you want to get involved in retreats or do one-on-one work, check out the show notes for links to get you directed where you want to go. And I'm so grateful for you being here. Until next time, take care.